Clemson loses again. This time it's at NC State. It's their second loss in a row on the road at NC State, losing there in 2021. It's been so frustrating these past couple years, basically seeing all of Clemson's meaningful streaks ended. And with this loss, Clemson's streak of 10-win seasons now ends. 2021, their streak of wins against NC State ended. Their home win streak ended last year at the same time their win streak over the Gamecocks ended. And really, all the meaningful streaks are now over. Clemson is essentially in a rebuild. Now, the good thing is, in modern college football, you can rebuild in one offseason. The bad news is I don't know if Clemson's willing to do that. It's now become clear that Clemson is going to have to replace starters, guys who are coming back, but they weren't good. You're going to have to go in the portal and replace them. So, it's going to be a long rest of the season and a bit of a long offseason until those moves can be made. And that's when, things will get the most interesting. We'll find out, pretty much by, let's say, February, how serious, or maybe March, but certainly before the spring game, how serious Dabo is. We'll talk more in a future video. Let's wait till after the Notre Dame game. But I think there's a couple different paths Dabo Swinney could potentially go down, and I kind of want to discuss all of those. But for now, let's talk about some more immediate things. So Clemson, just the offense was just terrible, and they had another huge blunder that cost them the game. Against Florida State, it was the fumble, scoop and score. Against Miami, it was the fumble on the 1-yard line. This time it was a pick six on a tipped ball to Peyton Wilson. Peyton Wilson eventually got hurt, and NC State defense was pretty bad without him. Clemson was able to move down the field. What upset me, I don't know if it was the most, but one thing that really upset me was in-game decisions by the coaching staff at the end of the game. Without Peyton Wilson's, Clemson's finally able to move the ball. They're down 10 because they missed a field goal earlier. They get all the way down. They're at the 2. It's third down. They elect to pass it. I think there on that third down, you decide in advance, we're going for it on fourth down. We'll probably not get to the 2 again in regulation. You've seen an entire game of your offense struggle. You got to decide that in advance. You run it with Maffa. And if he doesn't get it, hopefully he picks up 1, you run it again. Because if you kick a field goal, you're probably losing the game. Instead, they pass it. It's incomplete. Almost got picked. Randall actually made a great play to prevent the interception. They barely make a 19-yard field goal. Was about to be, I think it was wide right. He barely squeaked it in. And then when they get the ball, the defense does great. Again, feels like they're getting left out to dry constantly. Defense bailed them out again, gets them the ball back with plenty of time. Offense plays with absolutely no urgency. Clock gets really tight, and then Cade Klubnik and the offensive line, I feel like those are the two culprits lately. There's a big sack, and that sets them back, and they need a touchdown instead of a field goal, so they're forced to go for it, and they, of course, don't get it. So I thought, Dabo's never been a really great in-game decision-making type coach, when to go for field goals, when to go for it, when to play the analytics, all that type stuff. But it matters a lot more when your team's not as good. And, that was a big factor. It certainly wasn't like a Mario Cristobal, kneel the ball, win the game, and you run it and fumble. It wasn't that bad, but I thought it was another poor end-of-game situation. The one bright spot in this game, well, on offense at least, was Phil Maffa. He had the highest PFF grade of all Clemson offensive players last year. It's been really frustrating for a lot of fans who see that he's the most effective weapon Clemson's got, arguably the most explosive, also maybe the toughest, most physical, and he's not getting that many carries. It's really a shame. Hopefully Shipley's okay. I hate that it took Shipley getting hurt to get Maffa in there. Maffa did take advantage of the situation, though. 84 yards and 16 carries. He had both Clemson touchdowns. I thought he was exceptional. He also recovered a really bad fumble by Cade. Another sack where Cade didn't see the guy coming was very similar to the Florida State one, but Maffa was there to pick it up and prevent another scoop and score touchdown. Cade's just got to have more presence, more awareness in that pocket to see the guy coming. But Maffa was there to save that one at least. I thought he was great. Hopefully Shipley's okay. Again, never want a guy to get hurt, but Clemson's, I think, a better offense when they're giving Maffa a lot more carries, at least half. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with that duo next year. I think it's crazy for Maffa to come back and get less than a third of the carries behind a bad offensive line. If I was him, I would consider either going somewhere to get more carries and or going somewhere to get a better offensive line to run behind. Of course, we'll see what happens with Shipley in the offseason. We'll see what happens with the offensive line. Maybe they'll take transfers or get a new coach, something like that. But I love Maffa. I thought he did great. I want to give him a big shout out. Klubnik really struggled. He was 33 for 50 for 60, which is a 66% completion percentage. Not terrible, but the 5.3 yards per attempt is terrible. That's Phil Maffa averaged that on the ground, right? And Klubnik on 50 pass attempts is averaging 5.3 yards per pass attempt. So that's really, really bad. He also had 2 picks. Again, he's regressed. And I don't know I think it's a little tough to give him a hard time for regressing. We saw DJ regress. When you play behind a bad offensive line, I think you get happy feet. When you have wide receivers you don't trust, I think it causes these issues. So, there was two critical tip passes. I think that's mostly on the offensive line. Got to get the hands down. One of them would have been a huge play to Bo Collins, and the other one resulted in a tip pass that was the pick 6. Tristan Lee started at right guard. I thought that was a good move. I mean, it was better than Mitchell Mays and Harris Sewell. Get your best 5, even if one of them's out of position. The difference between Tristan Lee and Colin Sadler versus the guys they're using at right guard, the offensive line's not as deep as they said. So I thought that was a good move. Let me pull this up. I think this is the same chart I had up in the last video, and I think a lot of people found it interesting, so I want to share it again. So this is the breakdown of of the process. This is not a ranking of the coaches. It's just a breakdown of the process by which Clemson got the coaches. On the far right, I think Mike Reed is the best cornerbacks coach in the entire country. He was an external hire they got from another ACC school. Nick Eason, I think he's a very good defensive tackles coach. Rukaroro was amazing today. I think that's a reflection on Nick Eason. They got him great NFL experience, and they got him from an SEC school in Auburn. And then, of course, Garrett Riley, the Broyles Award winner. Hated Garrett Riley's call at the end of the game, but overall, I think he calls a good game. It was a good offensive mind. And, of course, as you go to the left, the process gets worse. That doesn't mean everyone on the far left is bad and everyone on the far right is good necessarily, but I think you see when you follow bad process 5 times, you're going to have more misses than you would if you follow a good process 5 times, or in this case, 3 times. You see Clemson's probably 3 best coaches are all external hires. It's also worth noting that Clemson's biggest weaknesses are offensive line, which Thomas Austin coaches, defensive end, which Lemansky Hall coaches, and wide receiver, which Tyler Grisham coaches. So hard to deny there's at least there's certainly a correlation there. Be up to Dabo Swinney to determine if it's a causation. Talking about wide receiver, Bo Collins, I thought he had a great block, but it turns out it was a hold. He had a really big drop. He led all wide receivers with 40 yards receiving. Had a couple really good plays. One I thought certainly he didn't catch, but he came out with this. So he had a couple good plays, but he's the only guy only receiver really doing anything. It was really Jake Briningstool, the tight end, who's really Clemson's only good receiving threat at the moment. Stellato had 7 catches, but only 29 yards and a false start. Adam Randall had 3 catches, which was good, but only 23 yards, nothing after catch. Brandon Spector had 2 for 16, and Tyler Brown has really hit a freshman wall, 3 for 6 yards. And just, Antonio Williams was great as a freshman, and then he's kind of disappeared. And obviously he's hurt now with a toe injury. He'll probably be out for a while. Doesn't sound like he'll play against Notre Dame. Hopefully we haven't seen the best of Tyler Brown. Just feels like players come to Clemson and we're not seeing that progression. So it's just really discouraging there. Wade Woodaz has been awesome. He's a guy on defense. I made that comment about offense. On defense, you do see guys get better. Wade Woodaz is one of them. He's awesome. He had the only sack of the game. Again, the defensive ends just haven't been getting after it. Maskell was out, but TJ Parker didn't do anything. Xavier Thomas didn't do anything. So just disappointing again from the defensive ends. Aside from Maffa, I'd say the players of the game, Rukaroro, maybe Woodaz, and definitely Jake Briningstool had 8 catches for 93 yards. Thought he would be doing this all year, but better late than never. He's one of Clemson's best threats right now. So, disappointing game. At this point, coming into the game, frankly, I just wanted to win the rivalry game. So win the Textile Bowl, win the Palmetto Bowl. Honestly, at this point, maybe beat Georgia Tech. That's a bit of a rivalry. And certainly beat South Carolina, make a bowl. Beyond that, Notre Dame just beat Pittsburgh 58-7. They outgained them 535 to 255. If not for some interceptions they threw, it could have been worse. They beat Clemson 35-14 last year, and it's about what you should probably expect this year. I'm not going to do a preview video of that because, I mean, I don't know how much more there is to say about it than, you know, they've got the better quarterback and they're just much, much better on the lines of scrimmage. They'll probably ground and pound it and wait for Clemson to make mistakes. I don't think they'll try to put up 58 on Clemson. I think they'll kind of follow the formula of play conservative and wait for Clemson to have a meltdown. And that's what NC State did. They played super, super conservative. They were criticized by the commentators, but in the end, Clemson made mistakes and beat themselves as they so often do. Hey, wanted to remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. It really helps it grow. Already over 500 subscribers. So thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed. If you're already a subscriber, please like this video. And thank you. All right. Last thing I want to talk about, and maybe it's something a little bit happier and more fun, is we got some upcoming basketball games. I'm going to sort of work in these into the football recaps. So on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, November 1st, Clemson gets an exhibition against Newberry. That's at 7 p.m. It's probably going to be hard to catch it on TV. It looks like it'll be live stats only, but it'll be still interesting to see how guys perform. Really interested to see Joe Girard, the transfer from Syracuse. He's a big-time shooter. You want to see how he integrates into the offense with Chase Hunter at point guard and PJ Hall at center. Hall was really not healthy last year, and now he's moving a lot better. I thought Brownell and some of the players, Eric McLean and Kelly Gramlich, do a great job on their ACC podcast. Worth checking out. I recommend it. They did a whole Clemson preview episode where they interviewed several different players, and Chase Hunter was talking about how PJ wasn't healthy and was getting winded really easily last year, especially in the early going. So he's finally had a healthy offseason. You know, cross your fingers these guys stay healthy. They certainly can't afford a serious injury to Hall or Hunter or probably even Girard. But right now, there's a lot of promise going to the year. So they'll start with Newberry. That's just an exhibition. But then before I do another video potentially, they'll host Winthrop. And that's on Monday, November 6th, right after the Notre Dame game. So Winthrop is actually pretty decent. They're projected to go 19-12. They're ranked 161st in KenPom, which doesn't sound great. But last year in non-conference play, Clemson only faced 4 teams that were in the top 161. That was Iowa, who they lost to, Penn State, Towson, and Richmond, who they beat. Their non-conference schedule last year was really weak. And so they picked up 2 bad losses and only 1 good win. And those 2 bad losses, Loyola, Chicago, and South Carolina, they became an anchor that held Clemson back on their resume all year. Probably really the reason they didn't make the tournament in the end. And so they pivoted. They saw what they did wrong and they changed. And this year they're going to face a lot of really good opponents in non-conference play. So of course it changes as the year goes on. But right now, Clemson will face. So that was 4 teams in the top 161. This year they have Winthrop, who's 161st. UAB 90, Boise State 63, Maryland, they'll be pretty high. Maryland or Davidson, depending on how that tournament goes. Alabama, they're 10th. South Carolina, they're 66th, so they should be much improved. TCU, they're 30th, and Memphis, they're 32nd. So you go from 4 to 8 potentially if they play Maryland. So big jump right there in schedule. So last year they went 8-3. This year, if they go 8-3, that means they're picking up, like 5 quality wins rather than the 1 they picked up in last year's non-conference. So, maybe expect a little bit of a slow start. Jack Clark, who's a transfer in from NC State, he's probably going to miss some of non-conference play as he's recovering from hernia. I read that he was shooting and now he's just recently, last couple of days or week, started running. So, I'm guessing he might not play against Winthrop. Maybe they don't go 8-3, maybe they go 7-4, something like that. But with a schedule like this, they could kind of sustain that and be okay. But yeah, so Joe Girard from Syracuse, big time shooter. He's a guy to keep an eye out on. Jake Heidbreder, another big time scorer, averaged 15 at Air Force. And while Air Force is Mountain West and doesn't sound like tough competition, their strength of schedule rating was actually very comparable to Clemson last year. Clemson played a weak non-conference schedule, and they got really fortunate in their ACC draw and had a particularly weak ACC schedule with the teams that they faced twice, right? You get Georgia Tech and Florida State twice every year because they're our rivals, but Clemson also got teams like Louisville twice. Now, of course, they lost to Louisville once, but they had an easy path, and that's why they were in the running for the ACC regular season championship for so long. This year it's not going to be as easy, but that doesn't really matter for your path to the NCAA tournament. I think the goal is just to win an NCAA tournament game, something they haven't done since that Sweet 16 run. So Clemson has an 88% chance to win against Winthrop, so be sure to tune in. And then also check out Nachos and Analysis. I'll be their guest on their, should probably drop Thursday on their podcast, so check them out. And otherwise, thanks for watching. Please like this video, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for being a viewer. I appreciate it.